And talk us through the SAS. We hear so much about it. There's a certain degree of mystique about it. There's certainly a lot of reverence towards the SAS, held in the highest regard. What were your first impressions when you joined or entered the regiment?
I thought I was very, very privileged to be there. I couldn't believe I was in after all the work to get through that, get up to that course and pass that course. But I just felt I had to fight for everything I would ever get out of the place, which was true in part, but not necessarily, because one of the things that happens as you go through those events in your life, you get this personal growth. You don't see it coming, but you build this level of personal growth and understanding, wisdom, experience, and that allowed me to sort of just keep building on it. And so coming from a low place as a delinquent, if you like, a juvenile going down the wrong path, to a member of the SAS it changed me. It was fundamentally, gave me a series of goals and ambitions, and horizon was, I suddenly realised that you can be whatever you want to be. People have been saying this to me my whole life. You tell your own kids that, but there's a certain point of realisation when you say, I can be whatever I want to be, I just have to go out and become it. And it's that point that I gained my year 12 requirements, and I wanted to go and find other ambitions. And so going to Duntroon and becoming an officer was an ambition. I'd seen all the officers run the show, basically, and I thought, gee, that leadership thing is a really, really interesting thing to me. And so I ended up applying for Duntroon. I got knocked back the first time, and then I subsequently got in a year later, and made some of the best friends, well, right through that time, but certainly from Duntroon, made some of the best friends that I cherish to this day.
What was sort of the lasting impression of your time in the military? Because it was more than 2 decades that you spent in there. Was there sort of there's obviously defining moments along the way, and you mentioned this learning that you can be whatever you want to be, and then there's a brotherhood of the regiment. But what sort of lasting impression? What was your big takeaway?
This might sound a little odd, but I have this reasonably firm belief, having led men for many, many years, that sacrifice is a learned skill, and that's why I'm a big supporter of organised team sport, because for boys, sacrifice is a learned skill. And one of the biggest impressions I had was I was at my very best when I was in the service of my mates. And so you often hear this thing, so-and-so, he fought for his country, that flag we fought on. It's a load of bunkum. Men and women go away and fight for 2 reasons. One, that's what they said they'd do when they joined. And secondly, because they never want to let their mates down. So that very clear characteristics of Australian life, which is mateship, and I know it's cliched and hackneyed in so many ways now, but that was the lasting impression. And to this day, I was just at a function on last weekend with old mates, doing a charity function for raising money for some of my mates that are not doing so well, and haven't seen them for years and years and years, and just bang, straight back into them telling me where I'm going wrong and me listening very dutifully.
How difficult was it for you then, after you left the service, to then make a judgment call or make a decision to voice your support for withdrawal of Australian troops from Iraq, for example? As a one-time career soldier, how difficult was that? And talk us through that.
Incredibly difficult, because there was so people might not recall, but at the time when I separated from the defence, I felt there was time for a comment around the legitimacy of the Iraq commitment and the Iraq conflict. I came out of Afghanistan, so 9/11 happened, I went into Afghanistan. 2 weeks later, we're in Afghanistan, working for then Brigadier General Mattis, who's now the Secretary of State. I came out after 5 or 6 months of doing that, and then I came back to Perth in 2002, and then deployed towards the end of 2002 to the US to plan the invasion of Western Iraq with my tactical team. And we're ensconced in a windowless building, with the US and UK Special Forces counterparts for the invasion of Western Iraq, for the principal purpose of WMD search and deny Scud launch. So the Scud missiles from the first Gulf War had landed into Israel. That would have been an unacceptable outcome in this time round to try and maintain the coalition. And so so we're well into this tactical plan, to meet these requirements. There's a 5,500 men invading Western Iraq in a continuous coalition force, coordinated. It's a hard thing to do, so we're sort of 3 months doing that. I sent a message back to Australia at the time where I said, I have seen, this was just a factual thing, there was no other, I'd seen no, what we call actionable intelligence about WMD that was any newer than 1996. So a satellite photo or a confirmed sighting of a Scud launcher or a refueler or a radar. So there was none. But I just made that point saying, and then in hindsight when I thought about it, and once we got in there, we got dry hole after dry hole as they called it, there was nothing. I realised on reflection that it was a fabrication, effectively. By omission or commission, I don't know. But there had just been this groupthink. I think it would be charitable to say about the coalition forces that just went along with the US to participate in this war. Now, I wasn't averse to, my point wasn't, I wasn't averse to regime change in Iraq. It's not the point. But make the case. Because Australia has a particular characteristic about honesty and openness, I believe anyway, with the people of Australia. They don't, they know when there's somebody's trying to feed them a line, and I just feel that if John Howard had undertaken a more diligent role, I wonder if it was a different outcome. Ultimately, we went in there and created, in hindsight, of course, it's easy to do, but it's sort of the circumstances in Iraq now and the living conditions, the amount of countless civilians that have died. Did we do anything really good? Sure. Basically, Saddam Hussein was somebody who couldn't work with the international community anymore, and I understand that's maybe the pretext for regime change. But ultimately, and people say, well, why did you go if you didn't believe in it? Well, it was, as I said, it was in hindsight when you reflect on these things. And the reason I did go is because in 1980, I put one hand on a Bible, another hand in the air, and so I'll go where my government sends me. And in that moment, there's a conferred moral responsibility to the government of the day to send you to something that is consistent with the characteristics of being Australian.
What was sort of the initial feedback, particularly from your old mates in the regiment?
Yeah, no, it was very much that I bit the hand that fed me, sort of thing. How could I betray? And I was at pains to say, this is a commentary around the political decision to go to war. This is not a commentary around the righteousness of the war or the service that was given. So, but you can say these things, they had that sentiment to this day, but, they've forgiven me. And the reason they've forgiven me is because I think as they've got older, my cohorts have got older, they've reflected too on other things than just the mission of the service. And as a result, they've been a little bit more circumspect about it. And the other thing is, just about every retiring general after that said the similar thing. And I said, well, hang on, I said that years ago. I was first. They said, no, you're political. So